Tolis. So it's great to see you here. We met at one of the previous meetups. I've been impressed by your profile. Can you introduce yourself to the group, please?
Hello, Alex. Thank you for inviting me to the meetup. Yes, so at the moment I'm a chief technical architect for a company, a gaming company called Ballis. Formerly it was known as Gamesys PLC, but recently we got acquired by a US company that is called Ballis, and now we were renamed to Ballis Interactive. The company is actually a gaming company. It's doing distributing and developing gaming products, mainly focused on gambling. We have big websites in UK, known to the UK audience that would like to gamble, like Jackpot Joy and Virgin Games and others. But we have websites across the whole globe, and now we're expanding in the US. And thus, we got acquired by this US company to help them have online presence because they have a lot of casinos. Now, as I said, I'm a chief technical architect. Technical architect at Gamesys is a generic term that we use in our organization, in Ballis, for a software architect, but also for a data architect, for a security architect. We use the generic term as a technical architect. Outside of the organization, in the industry, usually technical architect is the architect who is involved with infrastructure. But this is some legacy name that stuck with the organization now. So we are all technical architects inside the organization. The way that we organize is that we have three big departments. One is that's responsible of distributing and developing games, which I'm responsible for. Another one is all about the things that a player needs in order to play a game, so subscribe, create an account, create a pay, etc., deposit money, etc. And another department is for data. So I'm responsible for the gaming part of the organization. I'm leading a team of 5 technical architects, but also I'm managing 6 technical architects, and that's something different that we're doing in the organization. We split the leading part of the role from the management part of the role.
That's very interesting, and that's definitely something I'd like to talk with you about, because this is a distinction that definitely needs some clarification, and I'm still myself a little bit confused and lost about it. But before we talk about leading versus management, I just want to understand what does a leader of leaders actually do on a daily basis? After all, I mean, the people you lead, they know what they are doing, and they're typically confident. They typically are competent. What is your role really in that context? Why do these people need leadership?
Well, that's a very good question. These people are all, actually, I won't say all of them, but the majority of them.
Tolis, I think you dropped off a little bit, or either it was me. I heard you saying a majority of people, and then you dropped off.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the majority of people that the people I lead are accomplished architects. Okay, they are very knowledgeable. They are very experienced. So when I say I'm leading them, I'm not giving them constant direction. For example, if you find yourself into giving someone contact direction, probably they are not as senior as they think they are. What I'm doing, I'm giving them guidance, and I'm giving them long-term vision and strategy in the role. I'm there to, enable them to do their job better, and I'm there to sponsor them into all their initiatives. So these people are responsible for the way that we organize. Each technical architect is responsible for area. Okay, and this area can have multiple teams. and they are responsible for one or two products. So they, in their minds, they have a vision themselves. They have, initiatives that they want to run and make their platform and their area and their products better. I think the majority of the time I'm enabling these people and I'm sponsoring their initiatives, and I'm communicating that up and down. I'm getting the funds that they need and the time that they need in order to chase and complete these initiatives.
Okay, got it. So what is it that you are responsible for? So how can your job be evaluated? What is it that you are evaluated for, essentially, in your role?
Yeah, as I said, as a department that has many different products, I need to align the department initiatives and cross-cutting projects and programs with the overall strategy of the organization. And I need to make sure that we deliver the things that and we could create the proper architecture that will enable us to deliver all the things that we want to deliver in the specific year. So it's hard to justify the role because if you, for example, if you are a developer, it's much easier to justify your role. You have a feature, you deliver your feature, you write your test, the feature goes into production. You got that instant gratification. You are energized. In my role, you feel, energized by seeing other people succeed. So my role mainly is enabling people to succeed. And if, we have accelerate metrics, if our lead time for change, the rate that we deliver a feature, etc., improves, I also have a part in this role, in this endeavor.
Okay, got it. So let's talk a little bit more about this difference between leadership and management. And by the way, what you mentioned about metrics, this is also interesting, and I wanted to talk about as well, if time permits, because you mentioned accelerate metrics. It's something that a lot of organizations are adopting. But before we talk about it, I wanted to clarify this difference between leadership and management. You mentioned actually that these roles have been split at your organization. So yes. Can you explain that? So what is the difference between the two roles, first of all? Yes. Can they be split even?
So, as I said, I'm managing 6 technical architects, and by management, I'm the main responsibility. I'm not, so these technical architects are from different departments and different domains, not specific from my domain. Because we try to be flexible and push for mobility in the organization. An architect might be this year in this domain, but they might move in a different domain. But we didn't want to change the manager every time they want to move in a different domain, because you lose this continuity. I'm helping these people build their careers, move up the career ladder. I know about the problems, I know their strengths. Now, if in every time you want to change a domain because there is more need on a specific domain, you have to change the manager. You have to do a handover. The manager needs to get to know you from scratch again. So we want to avoid all this overhead every time. And this is because we have mobility inside the organization. So people are free to move to different areas and different products when that is needed, or when they want this. But I'm a leader on my department. So I'm there. And I think that the difference between leadership and management for me is like management is how you should be doing the process. Leadership for me is more like the why and the what. Like, are we working on the right things? Are we, becoming a team? Are we exchanging information? Are we helping each other? Are we working towards a common goal? This leadership for me. Management is, as I said, the how, the process. Like, are we doing the right thing? But are we doing it rightly?
Got it. Okay, makes sense. So do you ever get into a sort of conflict there between, if you're a leader of a particular person, do you get into a conflict with the manager? Is there a conflict between those two things? I mean, from the way you described it, seems like there are different domains and the why of doing things and how to do this. But still, do you see some conflicts there, or do you think this separation is clear?
When I'm a manager of someone, they have the psychological safety to come to me and actually complain about the leader. As people who I lead can go and complain to their manager. So that gives you this freedom. It will be much harder for if I actually led and managed the same person to come and complain to me about the way I lead or so this is another reason that we avoid it. So with my peers, if that's what you're asking, we have a very good communication, and because we split, we have these different the dual reporting lines between the developers, the architects. That forces our peers to communicate more and exchange ideas and discuss about how other architects are performing and how they work together. So that also bolsters, the team building exercise and communication patterns. There are a lot of cases where we had, difficult discussions and conflict and about the performance of other architects. So do you want to elaborate more on this one, or?
Yes, this actually sounds interesting. I'd like to ask you about some stories of, some of the challenges you've had in this role, because many of the people who attend this meetup are aspiring leaders, and it would be interesting to know what would you advise to someone starting, the path in leadership. How to avoid the greatest challenges and what they are and how to tackle them.
There are a lot of challenges, but what you should avoid. I can start with a story, because the team I'm leading has different maturity levels. Okay, we have junior architects and we have very senior architects as well. If I want to focus, if I focus more on junior architects, they have to rewire how they're thinking what success is. So when you're jumping from a individual contributor as a developer, like you are very strong on the technology that you're using, on the on the practice and everything, and then you have this instant gratification. My code compiles, I'm happy. My tests are passing, I'm happy. When you jump into the architecture role, you don't have that instant gratification. That might span into months or years until you see something. So one thing I'm helping junior architects a lot is to understand that. And I had a problem recently, last year actually, that a very good principal developer wanted to move to architecture. And they stayed in the team for 6 months. And then they decided to leave because they started to understand that, not coding that much anymore, not programming that much. It didn't give him the pleasure that they wanted to find. Yeah. So you see that even I try to explain to him, like from the beginning, that you will need to find other ways to be energized. Eventually he didn't like that, and he moved back to being a principal developer, which is perfectly fine in the organization. Another again from a junior architect was that he joined a new area. He had all these ideas and he tried to apply them with a lot of passion, and he found a lot of pushback from the area. So and another thing that you need to teach and learn is change management, politics, and how to navigate this politics, and how to make people want to change.
This is very interesting. I like what you just said, making people want to change. So I'd like to pause here because this is, I think, a very interesting segue. What I'm like to do is change to gallery view right now so that everybody can participate. And if you have any questions, by the way, to anyone in the audience, feel free to post a question in the chat or just turn your mic on. By the way, thanks to Mikhail and Matti for turning your cameras on. The rest of you, I encourage you to turn your camera on so that you can participate fully. Also, we are speakers who like to see your reactions. It's great when you do. Thanks, Victoria. So Tolis, so you mentioned making people, how did you say that? Making people want to change?
Want to
that
change,
was what you
yes,
said. Yeah.
Yes.
So what does it mean?
So every time as human beings, we don't really like change. We find change scary. We are afraid of change. Most of the people. So one of the responsibilities of an architect or even a leader is to. I read something very interesting the other day from Simon Sinek. It's like make people fall in love with him. Of them, yeah. So you do these small actions every day that will make people follow you, listen to you. But it needs, it needs consistency. It needs to keep pushing, but not pushing literally, like with a gentle way. And you need to spend a lot of time making people feel comfortable about the change that you're trying to introduce. If you go with all these ideas, like you went through to, don't go to a conference anymore, but you went to an online conference, or you read this book, your head is full of ideas, you want to apply them, you cannot just go and start applying these ideas. You have to do it slowly and, by planning small examples, by leading by example.
Okay, I got it. So we have a question from Serdar Mustafa from London. So a lot of good points have been raised, some new, some not. My question is, with any of this, how do you think approaches should differ based on organizational size, structure, or even if it's a SaaS compared to an agency? So what do you think, Tolis? Different kinds of organizations.
Yeah, so it's all about the maturity of the organization and the architecture of the organization, because you have system architecture, but also you have organization architecture, and these two need to go hand to hand. Okay, so and they influence each other. So if you're a startup, usually most of the startups are have a small group of people working together. They produce code. As we touched earlier, they are energized and they get instant gratification. They're working on hard business problems and fast. And then you move as you grow up to a scale up or to a mature organization. The challenge is that you're adding a lot of. Unfortunately, even if you try to architect the organization to be lean, you're adding a lot of layers because of the number of people who are in the organization. So leadership principles and practices don't change because the human nature does not change. We are humans. In any industry, these stay the same. You're being community transparent, being a role model. These things don't change. I think it changed. The thing that changes is how many people are actually looking up to you. That's what I find. If that answers your question, Sardar.
Yes, it was quite a broad question, so I wasn't looking for kind of a very specific answer, but it's nice to see your approach and kind of perspective on things. Thank you, Tolis.
Thank you.
Right, so let me ask you a little bit about those metrics. So you mentioned accelerate metrics. So you work with really smart people that report to you. How do you ensure that they don't hack the metrics? There's a lot of the metrics that we can come up with can be hacked. So there are ways we could easily sort of artificially inflate those metrics, yes, optimize them. How do you ensure that the metrics actually reflect something real?
The easiest way to do it, I could say that I'm bypassing the people I manage and I'm going straight to the teams and asking, hey, is that right? But then it seems that it shows that I don't trust them. I think the trick is to make the people care about the metrics and create a psychological safety that will come back and tell you the truth. That if a metric doesn't go well, or so there's a problem, they're not afraid to come back to you and tell you that a lead time to change increased by 5 weeks. I think it's great to know, because then you can go and see, is that because of the architecture? Is it because of business objectives? Is it because of something happening in the team and that some conflict? So, or people are burning out. A lot of things that can happen, but I think you have to create a psychological safety, and you have to persuade people that these kind of metrics are not only good for the organization, but good for them and the team as well.
Okay, great. Marty is asking a question, asking more like an observation. So can you just hire people with self-management capabilities?
Yeah, I suppose. I said that self-management comes with maturity, and I think the more senior you get, the more disciplined you are with yourself. Yeah.
All right, great. Serdar, you have you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I have a question if we have time.
Sure, we do.
So regarding using kind of data, it's a topic that I've been trying to spend more time on in my team the last few months, taking of a data-driven development approach and using different kind of analytics. So I've explored some tools that are out there to assist in this, things like Code Climate, Jellyfish, and PS Flow, which are supposedly, how should I put it? They provide more context around the data and not just looking at lines of code written. They can analyze the complexity and throughput, velocity, and all these kind of metrics, right? And when trying to get the buy-in from my team, I've actually found that it's the more experienced people. In fact, the biggest challenge has been from our lead technical architect in trying to use these kind of approaches. And kind of what we've found is the more senior the people have been on, kind of more tenured, the more kind of old school mentality that they've got and don't want to try newer approaches. Whereas the kind of mid and junior level people in the team are kind of actually so enthusiastic about trying to accelerate their careers and become better. They're open to trying lots of new things, as long as you can back up your ideas with some kind of evidence as to why it may be valuable to them. So if anything, do you have any advice on how to approach these more tenured people and not just help them improve, but by helping them improve, how do we help the team improve?
Well, we had that a lot, and I had that a lot, and I experienced that a lot. It's something that I think is called the old guard versus the new guard. And old people who have been a long time in the company, They are so used to the processes that they are there because of an old problem, or this is how we always do things here. If it works, don't touch it. And then you get new people in with fresh ideas, and then you have this conflict. And I think it's an organizational problem, not a technology problem, of course. I think the one way that I tackle that problem, because it's a very hard problem to tackle, is to move people around. Okay, I don't know if you have this flexibility in your organization, but when I found this pushback from very senior people, I just moved them to different teams where they had a chance to get introduced to have a change of scenery, a change of domain, learn something new, and start learning new stuff. Usually I found this pushback from people who are so used to the same domain, to solving the same business problems, that they've forgotten how to learn new stuff. So I usually solve that problem by moving people to different domains and get them to solve business problem again.
Very interesting insight. I like this advice. Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting approach. Unfortunately for us, we're quite a small team still, so there's not as much flexibility in doing that. But it's certainly something for me to consider moving to my my next role.
So for smaller teams, it takes more time. Like if I said you have a lead architect there, and it depends on the maturity of the architect as well. You might be a lead architect, but in the now that more and more companies are adopting agile methodologies, and we are stopping being traditional architects like ivory tower, big upfront design architects, and we are moving more to continuous architecture and pushing more responsibilities to the teams. This is something else that alienates a lot of architects who are more traditional architects. And that will take time, and it needs to be pushed from above and from below. A lot of pressure for people to change their mentality, but it will take time, but it will happen.
It's funny that you mentioned agile, because I think with any of these methodologies and any of these buzzwords in our industry, they're all quite subjective, right? It's not a standardized thing that you can kind of pick up off a shelf and apply to any organization. If you were to ask 10 people about what does agile mean for them or how is it implemented in their teams, you'd probably get 8 or 9 different answers. And yes. It's the same with anything in our industry, right? I think the key thing I found is just having that agreement in advance. So you have the same kind of definition of done or same interpretation of things.
But sometimes it's better to seek for consensus than consent, or consent than other than consensus will be better. So even if they disagree, they consent on and they move forward. But after, I don't know what is your position, your leverage you can have, and how power you have to do change. It depends. It depends on all these dynamics.
Yeah, no, I appreciate advice. I am conscious of time, so I won't take us any more off course. But thank you, Tolis, and perhaps we can catch up in Slack channel at some point.
Sure.
I appreciate your recommendations.
Of course.
Sure. Yeah, I really like this question. It's a very, very specific example, and I was thinking how possibly could that be solved in an organization, and this idea I like it really great. I was just thinking, and what would you think about the following, Tolis, is if you these senior people, maybe there's someone at this company they consider an authority. So if you can get them on board, then it's going to be easier. Even if you're in a situation where you're maybe hired as a leader and you're a new person, you don't have that authority yet. If you get somebody else who has that gravitas within the organization, behind you. Then that this may be a way to approach this, to have them.
Yes, but yes, that's another way that you can approach it. But if the specific person keeps causing problems and slowing down everything, sometimes you will need to take a difficult decision as a leader or as a manager, and you need to manage people out. If they're not happy here and they cannot work well with others, I don't say just fire them, but just create an exit plan for them. Understand where would we be happy, because I have an example of people in the company who've been with us for more than 10 years. They are in the same position for all these years, and they don't want any change. And we had to take that hard decision and create another career path for them outside the company, but with a very good recommendations, and make sure that they find a job that they love. That's another way that you can make this happen. If they don't listen and they don't want to change.
Yeah, like it, very constructive. So let me ask you about some resources. What would you recommend, Tolis, in terms of books, maybe blogs, informational material to consume, to devour, to learn from about leadership?
It's hard, isn't it? You know what? When I started, I subscribed to a newsletter, actually. That was like many years ago. The newsletter is called softwareleadweekly.com.
Okay.
So software lead weekly. Maybe let me type it into the chat.
Yes, please do.
So this one has really good resources on management and leadership. So I use that a lot to find authors and and people who are writing bloggers that I want to follow. So I'm not going to go give a list of, but I have some favorite authors like Michael Loeb, who has written Art of Leadership and Managing Humans. I'm currently reading. Give me a second. The High Output Management is it's an old book, but it's about managing managers by Andrew Grove, who was the former CEO of Intel. But I suggest you subscribe to this newsletter. It has tons of good information. Another thing that I'm doing, I'm usually using Twitter a lot, but what I do, I find people very interesting, people who are giving very good advice, and then I find who these people follow, and I follow them, and then I build my own custom list of people who are tweeting about management and leadership. So I have this kind of lists in Twitter as well. So yeah, that's how I usually learn. And of course, when I learn a new concept and try to apply it to my team, I warn them upfront. So I don't just go and apply them. I say that, I would like to try something new this month. So they are warned about it, and they are more receiving this way.
Okay, that's good to know as well. I'm definitely going to save this link. I haven't heard about it. I need to sign up and see what it's like. Sounds very interesting. We have a comment and a question from Boyan. How do you motivate people to step out of their comfort zones, to make them more active outside their matrix box or window? From my experience, people that stay in the same place and don't step out of their comfort zone sooner or later get demotivated. But not everyone is ready to take the leap right away. And once the leap is forced, it might not end so well. So you can have a very agile team, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are learning or changing in the process. to get that needed motivation. So what are your thoughts about motivation?
How to motivate people? Yeah, that's you have to talk to people, understand their needs and what makes them motivated, and that takes time to get to know another person. And this is what I'm doing in one-to-ones. I'm trying to understand what motivates them, what are the problems. And once I get that, and once I see that, if what are the interests, what do they would like to focus on, I try to, as I said in the beginning, to sponsor them and create the environment for them to work on these initiatives. Okay, so I had an example that an architect wanted to be involved more in organizational stuff, like managing teams, organizing teams. So we worked with a development manager in his area, and he's now more involved into this kind of activities. So again, it takes time. It's not a straightforward answer, but it's individual. But you need to listen a lot, and you need to care about others, I think, in order to motivate them. You need to fully understand why they're not motivated and why they're stuck in their current role.
I really like this concept of sponsoring them in their initiatives and what they want to do. Yeah. And that's a great takeaway for me. I would like to still do the breakout room session. And so before we go into the breakout room, I'd like to ask if there's anything else you'd like to share with the group.
If you're now stepping into a leadership role, I suggest that you find a mentor or many mentors. And I suggest you find a mentor outside of your organization because they're not that much institutionalized by your organization. So they have fresh ideas and they have a more objective opinion on how things should run and work. So yeah, that's my advice. Find someone that can mentor you on your new role if you're now starting with leadership, or even if you're actually a leader already.